What's up, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Processing Blue, where, Mike, what do we do?
We process blue for you.
That's right. He's Mike K. I'm Alex Zetlow. We're Carolina Panthers beat writers for the Charlotte Observer, and we got a lot to get to today. We're here to talk about the quote-unquote bad week of practice the Panthers had before falling to the Saints. We'll recap Sunday's game. We'll have a robust discussion on whether there is a Bryce Young dilemma in Carolina before wrapping the show with previewing the Atlanta Falcons. But first, Mike, here's my question. If you had 150,000, what would you do, Mike?
Go straight to the HSA with the amount of, kid stuff. And I mean, it'd probably go straight to daycare is my guess.
Nice. I wish I would have hit that those notes better, but hey, we're moving on. Because I imagine the Panthers also wish that they could have done more with those awesome vibes in Bank of America Stadium this past weekend. If you don't know what we're talking about, like just look it up on the internet. It's rampant everywhere, and it is a very, very catchy song by this dude named Carolina Mike. Okay, but that's the positive energy that was in Bank of America Stadium on Sunday, and that's pretty much all there was outside of that opening drive that resulted in a touchdown. But we'll get into the Saints game in a second. Before we get into the Saints game, though, I want to talk about the week of practice leading up to the game. After the loss in the Panthers locker room, Ike Ekwonu told reporters post-game that the Panthers had a pretty rough week of practice leading up to the Saints game, and that while he didn't think the Panthers overlooked New Orleans necessarily, there was ways in which that they could have been better. He wasn't the only one to think that. Christian Roseboom said it, quote, wasn't the team's best week of practice. JT Sanders told you that some blocks that they missed in practice were also blocks they missed in the game. Even rookie Nick Scorton got in on the discourse. Quote, I don't know if later in the season this is how practices are supposed to be, but I think it was just before the game. I got here early and it was just a little quiet. It just didn't seem right. Mike, I'm not completely shocked that this happened. It's the second time the Panthers have been favored this season. The team achieved some legitimate attainment against the Packers. So I'm not exactly shocked that there might have been a letdown in practice last week. I'm a bit surprised that players are speaking up so much about it. What is your whole take on this whole thing?
I think it's window dressing.
Mm.
I think it's like, for one, let's put this in perspective, right? So outside of Christian Roseboom, Ike Ekwonu on a rookie contract, Nick Scorton on a rookie contract, Jatavian Sanders on a rookie contract. These are young players. And I think when a head coach or a coordinator or position coach points something out in practice, you cling to it, especially from a messaging standpoint. I didn't get the sense that any practice that I attended last week, granted, we're only there for the individuals, that the intensity was down or anything like that, or anything was out of the norm. I think sometimes you do have a bad practice, or you write a bad article, or you go on a run that doesn't feel like you got the most out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that can impact your day or impact your performance or impact your week. But I've also covered teams that I've heard them say, oh, we had our best week of practice. And then they completely, stain the bed, so to speak. And, it's just, I don't know. I think this is a case of we're in a business where words matter. And it feels like these are words being interpreted by players based on the reflection of a coaching staff, as opposed to they lost because they had poor practices. I've also talked to several veterans over the years who are like, yeah, we didn't think we were going to win because the practices were so bad. And then they go out and win. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I watched the Eagles and Packers game last night. I don't think it mattered if they had the best practice in the world or the worst practice in the world in a situation like that. So I'm not calling it nonsense. I'm not saying it's a whole lot of nothing, but like, who cares? I mean, really, I don't think this is a rallying cry. Maybe this makes it so that when they play the Falcons, they're locked in. I don't think, based on my conversations with veterans before the game, that they were taking anyone lightly. Uh, maybe there was a select few. Mitchell Evans and Nick Gordon both kind of alluded to guys kind of human nature overlooking a 1-8 team.
Yep.
I don't think they speak for the entire locker room. I also think these are two guys who have played 10 games in the NFL, and it's kind of hard to read the room.
Sure.
I'm not downplaying this. I think this is window dressing for the fact that they came out and played horrifically on offense and didn't have any answers in the passing game. And this is a coaching staff that's now been in charge of this thing for 27 regular season games and still doesn't know how to make a passing game about more than just one receiver.
Yeah. Yep.
And we'll get into that. And look, I've been doing this a long time, and I still can't figure out what this passing offense is. I'm not the utmost expert on X's and O's, but I don't know what this offense is. I don't know what I know what it's trying to be, but I also don't think there's a trust factor issue with this entire offense just based on what you see.
Yeah.
And that has been the biggest problem. We're focusing on like extracurricular nonsense of, they had a bad practice or two bad practices. You're professionals. Step up. Show your talent. Show your execution. This is on everyone. This is not one or two guys being like, yeah, we're so much better than the same. Like, to me, I
hear you.
I have to be the HOA and tear this down, but like, I think this is just like, hey, look over here. You know what I mean? Like,
I totally understand what you're saying. And I think that is a fair point. And I think the point that you made about a lot of rookies and or like players on rookie contracts saying those sorts of things. I think that's a very valid point. Let's talk about the Saints game in general, though, because I think this will bring to light a lot of the points that you're making at the end of your discussion. So, okay. The first drive of the game, I think, also like went out and just validated and confirmed all of this, quote unquote. If there was credence to this fact that the Panthers did not have a good week of practice, there was that first drive validated and confirmed all that. The first drive ended in a Rico Dowdle touchdown, but remember, one pass from Bryce Young got batted at the line of scrimmage, should have been intercepted. And honestly, if it was, it could have gone for a long way. Then there was an actual interception Bryce Young threw that got called back for a roughing the passer penalty. Okay, those are two massive breaks the Panthers got. They used those gifts to turn into a touchdown. Rico Dowdle did his celebration. Didn't get fined this week. Cool. Awesome. That was the last time the Panthers sniffed the end zone. And really, they only had one other legitimate chance at scoring, and that was a blocked field goal. The Panthers had two turnovers, both facilitated by Bryce Young, technically. There was a defense that let Tyler Shuck throw for 282 yards and two touchdowns. A rookie quarterback that has not won an NFL game yet just comes in and doesn't just like lead his team to a win, but kind of puts the city on his back in some ways. Mike, what's the enduring moment from Sunday's game to you? I think there's a lot of issues, but if you could boil it down to just one or two, what would they be?
I think it's how they responded. I think the failed handoff was rough.
Yeah, like
the way they responded to getting two huge breaks. So the field goal gets blocked, but they recover because essentially it becomes a muff punt. Then the next, and they can't do anything with it. The next drive, well, they don't do anything with it because of the failed handoff. The next drive, Nick Gordon gets a fourth down sack in Panthers territory, and you can't take advantage of it. Like,
that was insane. After that sack, I was like, oh wow, okay, Nick Gordon's gonna be the guy that saved the Panthers' game this week, and in some ways, like, kept the good vibes in Carolina going. You literally turned to me and was like, all right, be prepared to write about Nick Scourton in that play. And then they didn't capitalize.
You know, after the press conference, or after the game, Dave Canales talked about how frustrated they were over their missed opportunities. And I think that's fair. I think there were missed opportunities everywhere. The defense was so close to sacking Tyler Shuck on 2 plays that ended up resulting in big gains for Juwan Johnson. Shuck completed 3 passes that got him, I believe it was like 143 yards and 2 touchdowns in the game. So just 3 of those passes that he threw accumulated more than half of his yardage on the day. J.C. Horn had a rough game. Really rough. Like, to me, he was on like a second-team All-Pro trajectory before that game. This was probably the worst game that I've seen him play at least in 2 years. Offensively, Bryce was bad. I mean, that is what it is. He was bad. But I also think like there was like 2004 or 2024 vibes in that the weapons really didn't do anything for him either. This offense, passing game wise, is predicated so much on T-Mac getting off to a great start and then setting them up for success in the second half to run the ball. That's what, like, they get the scripted plays or get T-Mac involved. Hopefully you can build a lead. Then you run the ball. They have no one else who's stepping up. Jalen Coker's been slowly kind of put in a position where he's eventually going to become a cog again. Xavier Legette has looked fast. I agree with Dave Canales. Like, he was open on a couple of downfield throws that just didn't work.
Well, he was only targeted one time, but
right. But there was the batted pass where Legette was like streaking wide open on a post route.
Okay,
guys were getting open. It just felt like whenever one variable was doing well, the other variable wasn't. So, like, even when Bryce was throwing an accurate pass, the other variable would drop it or get covered, or it would be a miscommunication. Conversely, when guys were getting open downfield, either Bryce missed them or didn't see them, or there was pressure, the offensive line got bullied around. Like, this offense, there's a trust connection issue, it feels like. If the ball's not going to McMillan, it's basically like when Adam Thielen was here. You know, they're ignoring the rest of the field, and I think Dave Canales, Brad Isaac, and Bryce Young all need to have a very long conversation about where this offense is going. Bryce Young's thrown for more than 200 yards once, and it was when he was trying to come back down 24 points. The longest completion this team has is on a catch and run that same game for 40 yards. There are 39 quarterbacks with larger completions than Bryce Young, and Bryce Young has started 9 games. I'm not putting this all on Bryce. He was bad against the Saints. But the offense had no answers. There's no like cheat codes in this offense for when the box is stacked and you got to get the ball to somebody other than McMillan, because it's very easy to. This team publicly advertises. They've taken out a full page in every newspaper in the country by saying, we want to run the ball. We're going to run the ball effectively. We're going to bully you like this. Well, when another team with veteran staff and a veteran defensive coordinator show up and say, well, like, let's just stop the run. You have no answers if McMillan can't get open, or McMillan's taking too long in his route, or you want the ball out in 2.7 seconds. This offense, I've said it 100 times, is not a very difficult or like complex offense. If you can execute, you will do well. If you can't, you're going to be run over. And when the run game doesn't work effectively, which I've said a million times, their keys to success are running the ball and stopping the run. Cool. Well, you know, like there's like a whole other element of football, right? And it's just, they have not made any progress. In fact, I think Bryce has regressed. I think Dave Canales has regressed as a play caller. and they are just not. They're not in sync.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it's purposefully or whatever, but Canales and Young have a disconnect, whether it's from a play calling standpoint or a communication standpoint. They're not working together because this offense seems to want to throw the ball outside the numbers a ton. And Bryce has no torque on his throws. He's got beautiful touch at times. Every ball floats or flutters. He's not zinging balls to the sideline effectively. And we saw it on the interception with the buzz.
Right. I was looking at.
Out. You can say he made a great play, okay? That's terrific. Good for you. That's great public messaging. Bryce threw the ball straight to him. And if you watch the film, T-Mac McMillan is 3.5 to 4 yards behind where the ball hits Alontae Taylor right in the chest. So the ball would probably have been at McMillan's feet on the comeback route. At best. At best. Either way, it could have skidded off the turf. Bryce is entitled to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. I make mistakes, you make mistakes, whatever. Dave Canales makes mistakes. But it feels like when this team gets hit in the mouth, they never have answers. And that's a problem, and it trickles down to the quarterback.
So, Mike, let me just play devil's advocate here for a second. While the Panthers were on this 4-1 stretch, yes, Bryce's numbers were not gaudy at all. They were not like he wasn't actually wildly productive. Like you said, he has thrown the ball for 200 yards one time. That said, there was still this like sentiment out there of, well, Bryce has this late game ability that's ineffable. He has he's led 9 game-winning drives since the beginning of 2023, which is wonderful. He like transforms into this new dude. Okay. He can't do that against the Saints. And so I understand why the moment he can't do like pull a rabbit out of his hat at the end of games, then all of this like pent up criticism that has been kind of suppressed the past couple weeks is now coming to the fore. I get that. But I was a little shocked, and not to say that Twitter is, or like even our emails or everything, but I was a little shocked to see how quickly it felt like the fan base went from, oh, Bryce is our guy. He is our like he is our prince, whatever sort of like sentiment there was. And then all of a sudden after the Saints loss, there's like the tides have turned. Is that just like a product of fandom in 2025, or like were there like legitimate, do you think there was legitimate reason for having all these latent criticisms just waiting to come out?
Well, I think the general fan is entitled to their opinion, and that's typically just, there are people that don't read, there are people that don't listen, there are people that solely just watch games on Sunday and they go with what they see. I think people that are frustrated with Bryce see the lack of sustainability in the way they were winning games. If you look at, they're averaging basically 19 points per game, which is roughly, I believe it's the 5th worst points per game total in the league. You can check me on that.
Yep, I'm about to.
When you're winning games, scoring 16 and 13 points, that's not sustainable in this league.
17.7 points per game. That's 28th in the NFL. So you're pretty much on. Yeah.
So they came into that game averaging 18.9 points per game. That's what it was.
Got it.
Yeah, that's pretty bad. If you're not,
these offensive stats are really quite poor. 17.7 points per game. That's 28th in the league. 297.1 yards per game. That's 27th in the league.
Yeah, they are playing bottom of the league
offensive football. Yeah,
especially from a passing perspective. And so it's unsustainable when you play team like this. The Panthers are who we thought they were, about a 7 to 8 win team. They're not bad enough that they're going to lose to every contender and be a gimme. They're not good enough to beat every lowly opponent that they play. We've seen that in the past few weeks, right? They beat the Packers, who were considered an NFC contender, and they lost to the Saints, who are a bottom feeder in their own division. So I think when we look at the Panthers as a whole, what's not working? The running game, for the most part, is. The run defense has improved mightily.
Yep.
Pass defense is typically pretty good. If you go back to, everybody wants to bring up the second half of last year. Well, if you go to those last 9 games of last year, the Panthers have shaved 7 points, a complete touchdown off their defensive allowed average. That is wild. They were allowing 22.2 points per game. They were allowing 29.2 during that stretch. Conversely, the Panthers went from averaging roughly 24.1 points per game during that stretch to now the 17.7 points per game. So that's almost a full touchdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like we talked about variables. When one thing's going well, the other thing doesn't. And I think those are growing pains from a young coach. I think it's growing pains from having a roster that has a dozen rookies on it. But from a quarterback perspective, it just feels like Bryce only trusts one wide receiver at a time. You know, the tight ends are catching the ball pretty cleanly at a 79% catch rate as a quartet. So that's including James Mitchell. But they're only averaging about 7.9 yards per catch. Outside of that, you got Leggett, who's averaging a catch rate of 52.5%. I believe Hunter Renfrow was at like 54.5, and he was averaging 5.9 yards a catch. That type of stuff at wide receiver is not helping you. And so I want you to go on, but like, for me, there's a trust issue with this passing offense. And I don't know where it stems from. I think everybody owns a piece of the pie, from the coaching staff to the wide receivers to the tight ends to the quarterback. And they got to figure this out, because you can't win like this. You can't. You have to be able to put up 23 to 26 or 23 to 27 points a game to have a legitimate shot at being a realistic playoff contender and making some noise in the postseason.
Yeah, totally. I want to bring this full picture for a second, or how you say. I want to take a really broad look at this, because I did get a lot of questions in this week's mailbag of, is this the game that the Panthers realized that they shouldn't pick up Bryce's 5th-year option at the end of the season? And so I essentially was like, okay, I posed the question based off a mosaic of questions to myself. Is there a Bryce Young dilemma in Carolina? And I'm going to pitch you this dilemma, and you tell me if you agree with it or if you disagree with it. The dilemma is simply this. Bryce Young has been inconsistent this season. And despite moments of this clutch brilliance that I made mention of previously, he hasn't put his team on his back to win a game yet. I mean, he put the team on his back against the Cardinals at the end of the game, but he was part of the reason why they had this massive deficit to crawl out of in the first place. And none of this was more evident than in the Saints game, for all the reasons that you elucidated, Mike. And yet, here's the dilemma part. One, he's still the best option for the Panthers. We know that based on what Andy Dalton did against the Buffalo Bills. We know that based on the fact that the Panthers ended up letting go of Hendon Hooker and bringing in Mike White, and now Mike White is released, and he might be coming back on the practice squad, whatever the case may be at quarterback. We just know that Bryce Young is QB1 for this team to achieve its dreams. But at the same time, he's probably going to be the best quarterback on this roster at the end of the season. He's still going to be the best quarterback on the roster at the end of the season. And so what are the Panthers going to do? Just roll the dice and say, okay, we're going to figure something else out for 2026, 2027 and get back into the let's find a quarterback game? We know, like anyone who's been following the Panthers knows how risky of a game that is. The Carolina franchise know how risky of a game that is. They haven't had a put team on your back quarterback since Cam Newton. So it's like Bryce is the best option. And yes, of course, this could all be a moot point. In October 2024, you wrote a really good story about the first Bryce Young dilemma when he was benched and the team didn't know what to do with him and he had no trade value and blah, 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 blah. And then the final 5 games of the season happened, and then all that was like, okay, wait, like Bryce is now the guy, and he is now the holder of all the Panthers' hopes and dreams in 2025 and beyond. So after a Week 10 game, this discussion be might be just squashed. I totally realize that. But there is a long-term discussion to be had, I think, right now, because he's the best option in the short term. But is he the best option for the long term? That still remains to be seen. Do you have an opinion on if this is the right time? One, if this is the right time to be discussing Bryce Young's 5th-year option and his future in Carolina, and two, if you do have an opinion on it, what is his future here?
You brought up fans like rushing to judgment, and I think that is, a byproduct of being a fan. But I think the luxury that the Panthers have is they have 8 more games to kind of try this thing out. Look, the 5th-year option is good business, especially on quarterbacks, because you save an exponential amount of money if the guy is good or even average, right? If you're in QB purgatory, you'd rather be paying a reduced sum than a long-term deal, right? And so I think the next 8 games are an audition to see if Canales and Young can work together. Because at some point, you have to say, does this offense fit this quarterback? Do we have to decide between one or the other when Canales was brought in to make the most of Bryce Young? But we also know and are under the impression that he's going to get some landing room. I mean, does it mean, I've contemplated, like, if this stays the same and they go 8-9, let's say, or 7-10, do you say to Canales, hey, you've got to give up play calling and hire an experienced play caller like a Brian Dable or Kevin Stefanski if he leaves Cleveland or what have you? And then does he turn to you and say, hey, can I pick a quarterback? Or I feel good about Bryce. Maybe he can thrive under Dable or whomever. I think they're going to have to look at the totality of the season, especially these last 8 games, and determine what the right concoction of, coaching and quarterback is. And I know that might sound like a cop-out, but I'm not copping out here. Right now, I don't think that Canales and Young are a fit for each other. I think there's enough proof in the pudding there. They're not attacking downfield. It seems like a lot of the turnovers come out of either Bryce making a mistake or the offense just isn't working. I don't know who the blame is, because like the only people that know the blame, like I'm not going to sit up here and be like some other podcasters or commentators that are like, I know exactly what the protection coverage is and or what the protection is. I know exactly who that was meant for.
Right.
Yep. We don't. And the only people that really know the true evaluation are in that building. Now, what we see is a disjointed product that's not working from a passing standpoint. I think you could give the run defense a C+ to a B-. I think you can give the running game a B+. I think you can give the passing defense at least a C, if not a C+. This passing game, when McMillan is not the target, is a D at best. And I think that's part of the problem. Now, people can go back and say, well, if Adam Thielen was here, then they'd have 2 dependable guys. But the whole point of trading someone like Adam Thielen outside of getting value is to have Bryce Young elevate and evolve outside of just trusting his normal target. You want him to be able to fling the ball around the field. I asked Dave Canales about that. He says that it takes time and they need to be more fluid in their targets. It can't just be McMillan, because I got to tell you, the splits for McMillan in the first half and the second half are starkly different. Okay. In the first half of games, he has 46 targets for 30 catches for 417 yards and a touchdown. He's catching the ball at a 65% catch rate, and he's averaging 13.9 yards per catch.
That's pretty.
Yeah, it's pretty great, huh?
Yeah.
Here you go. Here's the second half. 31 targets for 16 catches
Mm.
for 201 yards and a touchdown. He's had 3 second halves where he did not actually catch a pass. Now, they were all in wins, and he was not necessarily needed as much as they were just running the ball. And against Atlanta, he had 2 targets for 0 catches in the second half, for instance, but they were up 30-0. Against the Jets, while that was a close game, Xavier Legette and Andy Dalton did their thing. He had 1 target for 0 catches. And in Miami, I mean, that one's interesting because that was a comeback win, and he had 2 targets for 0 yards.
Mm.
So what I'm saying here is this kid's eventually going to hit a rookie wall. This is not the University of Arizona. He's getting used to the rigors of everything. He doesn't get to play UTEP on a random Saturday. Everybody in the NFL can play.
Yeah, straight shot at UTEP. Jeez.
He's not playing Northern Arizona after playing a division rival. Like, that's just not going to happen. And so you're putting a lot on this kid's shoulders as a rookie. And look, there are other rookies that have to be number 1 wide receivers, but they have much more around them. Like, you look at the case in Tampa Bay, like, there's much more around that kid than there is with McMillan. And I think that's part of the issue. If Chuba and Rico aren't running the ball effectively and McMillan is taken care of, who else is going to step up? And this was the same problem that they had last year when Thielen was injured, and they had to have Xavier Legette be the guy, and he clearly was not fit for that role. They need to figure this out, like, because it's hard to watch this passing game. And I don't think it falls all on Bryce Young. I don't think it all falls on Dave Canales or Brad Idzik. They have to feel this out because the clock is ticking. They have 8 games to go show, I keep saying 8 games. They have 7 games now to show, like, what's up.
Yeah.
Hopefully they get that 8th game, and that's the playoffs. But really, these next 7 games, this is like the hard part of their schedule. And they don't really have time to waste. I don't know if you wait for a quarterly review to figure out this passing game because it's just not working. The passing game does not work. And the whole reason why Canales was brought here was to elevate the passing game, and it has not worked.
Mm. Yeah. I think all of your points are very fair. It sounds like the Bryce Young dilemma to you, and I think we're aligned on this, is that there's just a deadline coming up, and the passing game hasn't been figured out. Where to assign the blame on why the pass game is faltering is up for debate. But the dilemma is, the clock's ticking.
Mm-hmm.
A decision needs to be made.
Yeah, but here's the thing. What's interesting about it is there can be a decision made in January, and then the NFL can be random, and something happens in February or March, and you're in a situation where, hey, maybe somebody sees something in Bryce more than you do, and they offer you a really big package for him. Or, you go through the draft process and you see one of these prospects and he fits the offense better, and that's what happened. Like, I don't blame anybody for being down on Bryce Young. I don't blame anybody for being down on Dave Canales. I think it's very hard to not be one without the other, because without knowing everything, it does feel like that tandem is just not working out right now on a consistent basis. And here's the thing. You brought up the clutch gene. That's great and all, but when was the last time this offense hummed in the passing game early in a game? And look, they're run to set up the pass type of offense. You can't do that with every defense. You've made the most of playing your mediocre opponents. The Saints, your mediocrest of the list, just spanked you. They came in with a great plan. Brandon Staley blitzed well. They stopped the run. They stacked the box. There was nothing for this. I mean, Dan Morgan and Bryce Young probably see Alontae Taylor in their nightmares, because the 3-sack game in week 1 of last year and then this interception. I was talking to some people that cover the Saints. They were like, that was easily Taylor's best game. So I don't know. I know I'm talking in circles here, and I'm sure the comments will be kind, but it doesn't look great, and they need to bounce back, and they need to bounce back against Atlanta.
Yeah, they do need to bounce back against Atlanta. Speaking of the Falcons, who are these guys? They like just looking at their schedule is just crazy. They lost by 3 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 1. Okay, understandable. The Tampa Bay Bucks are a legitimate team. Then they go out and they kind of dominate the Minnesota Vikings. And then they get shut out by the Panthers. They beat the Commanders. They beat the Bills. And then they lose to the Mac Jones-led 49ers and Eddie Pinheiro-led 49ers. Then they lose to the Dolphins. And then they should have beat the New England Patriots last week and lost. Or 2 weeks ago and lost. They probably could have beaten the Indianapolis Colts and lost. I don't really know who this Falcons team is. And I don't think the country knows who these Carolina Panthers are either.
I was going to say these. I think they're each other.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So we can go through specific stats and matchups. Obviously, the Falcons have one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in the NFL, and Bijan Robinson, whatever. And obviously, they're going to have the chip on their shoulder after the 30-0 loss that they took in week 3. Then again, I remember the Panthers and the Falcons have split the series against each other since 2019. No matter what no matter how bad the Panthers are, no matter how bad the Falcons are, they seem to get one win off each other. So with all that said, Mike, let's just go straight into our predictions. Do you want to go first or shall I?
You go first this time.
I'm going to say that the Falcons win. Because of all of this uncertainty and because of all of this, no one knows who the Falcons are, and because they regularly split with their NFC South rival. I'm going to say the Falcons win. It's going to be an ugly game, 18-13, something like that. And yeah, that's I think Atlanta gets back on track. I think this is their game to kind of refocus, and the Panthers are still going to have to figure out how to beat someone through the air because the NFL is a copycat league, and the Saints laid the blueprint for how to beat the Panthers, or at least to stifle them on offense. So I think that's what happens.
Well, and their passing defense is pretty solid. I mean, they are allowing the least amount of passing yards in the league at 162.3. Their sack rate is second in the league at 12.18%. Like, this is a terrible matchup for the Panthers, at least based on statistics, right? They do always play each other tight. They always play each other tough. Most of the memories, in good or bad, that I have of covering this team have either been in Atlanta or them against Atlanta for some reason. This is the real rivalry for the Panthers. Like, to me, like, historically, obviously, they have the Saints and they have Tampa Bay. But these two teams play each other like a rivalry. Like, they beat each other up. It's close, all that stuff. My brain is telling me take the Falcons and run. But there's like a weird sense of, what if this embarrassment against the Saints galvanizes this team to kind of say, you know what? Everybody's down on us again. Let's go have a Packers afternoon. And so I'm going to pick the Falcons. I mean, okay. I'm going to go 27-20. I don't know, but there is something. It would not shock me if the Panthers were able to pull this one out, just because of, like, they should be angry about the Saints loss. Like, that was a great opportunity. The Bucs lost that weekend. The Falcons lost that weekend. They have a pretty sizable lead over the two teams behind them, and it really would have been just a 2-team race, I think, if they beat the Saints, especially with 2 division wins and this early, and then having a 6-4 record. But man, this is going to be a tough task, because I think the Falcons, if they can pass the ball and stop the pass, they're going to win, because you're taking away what the Panthers have typically done well. Mm-hmm. And I I've been waiting for the Rico train to kind of run out of steam, and I don't think that was the case against the Saints. But I do wonder if a lack of success kind of stunts the momentum for him.
Mm.
I do think Chuba finally looks healthy. He had one run the other day that I was like, oh, okay, that's Chuba. And so I wonder if they mix it up a little bit more. You also don't want to run Rico into the ground this early in the season, especially before the bye week. Yeah,
The bye week that's still somehow like 4 weeks away or whatever.
yeah, man, it's exhausting. I can only imagine how the players feel. And look, to that point, maybe that's why they're having crummy practices in week 10, because frankly, like a fifth of the team is rookies, and they aren't used to this type of schedule or this type of level of competition or being in close games every week or taking the punishment that they do from the size of some of these guys. Jalen Cooker went to Holy Cross, right? Like there is like a little bit of a step up.
Hey man, respect for the FCS programs out there.
Yeah, I'm not hating on Holy Cross. I'm just saying like the competition is bigger and better and every week. So you have to make adjustments, and it's not always easy. There's going to be growing pains. This team, I was talking to Austin Corbett about it. This team is bound to make mistakes because they are so young, and they're still trying to figure out how to win. And I know everybody wants to win right away, but that's how you get into a situation like the Giants where you misinterpret your early start and your early success, and then you bottom out for 3 years. I think this front office wants to avoid what the Giants have been multiple times since firing Tom Coughlin, where they surge early and then you're like, oh, cool, everything's great. Let's sign guys to extensions. Let's buy into this. And then you bomb. And I think this team is stuck between two doors still, as I've said most of the year, even when they were going on a 3-game winning streak. They don't know if they are built to contend in the playoffs or they should be looking to continue to rebuild. And I think we're going to find out over these next 7 games because something has to give. Either they turn it on the way they did in the second half of last season and everybody has high hopes for Canales and Bryce Young, or it'll reveal to themselves who should stay and who should go. And 2026, I've said from the jump, has been their target year to really excel. They can't have more questions than answers heading into this offseason.
And they're going to try to begin to rectify some of those problems and answer some of those questions next week. Mike, good stuff. Anything else?
No, I think I've talked enough. I think everybody else would agree too.
No, it's all good. Thanks, as always, for listening to our pontifications on all things Panthers with Mike K and myself and our wonderful producer, Zach Dennis. Please subscribe and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts by searching Processing Blue. And if you watch us on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever new episodes drop. And finally, please be sure to stick to CharlotteObserver.com for all of your Panthers needs. Mike, somehow, some way, stay humble, stay creative, and keep processing.
I'll do my best. That's a wrap.